everyone, welcome to our channel. I take immense pleasure presenting before you today Dr. Ritama Paul. Ritama is a dear friend of mine and we had the privilege of knowing each other during our PhD in the University of Cincinnati. She completed her undergrad and master studies in India and then she went for a PhD in immuno-oncology in the US. After working briefly as a postdoc in the University of Pennsylvania, Ritama joined Johnson & Johnson as a postdoctoral scientist and is currently working there. Ritama has always been a straight-A student, is an amazing human, and her scientific career has been a complete roller coaster. She has kindly consented to take some time out of her busy schedule to answer a few questions about her experience studying and working in the US so that you all have a better idea of the process and what to expect. Thank you very much, Ritama, for your time today. So let's get started. Ritama, so you completed your undergrad and master studies in IISER Kolkata, which is a very reputed institution. What made you decide to move to US for your PhD?
So first, thank you so much for this opportunity and thanks so much for this kind introduction. I'm really happy to be talking to you. Yes, when I was at IISER, if you all might be aware, IISER is focuses a lot on, encouraging students to pursue a career in research. So as soon as I finished my master's, I was very certain that I want to pursue a PhD because I really enjoyed research. And so that time in India, I had already done a lot of summer internships and done some projects, master's thesis projects, and I had gotten some bit of exposure to research. And I knew what it takes to, do PhD, and I was also very interested in particularly cancer research. I had a lot of relatives who had cancer, and I just liked the biology, and it was really booming at that time. Lot of opportunities in cancer research. So I kind of saw how research was in Indian institutes, and I found that cancer research was not top class in India. And I had also an opportunity to do a short summer project in Germany, and I really saw how research is done, the facilities in a developed country. So that's why I kind of decided to pursue my PhD outside India, just because the infrastructure, the facilities are much higher. The type of experiments you can afford in a developed country, you can't really do that in India. I won't say like all streams are like that, like all field of research is like that, but like cancer research needs a lot of funding, and you do experiments which really are expensive. So that's why I decided to pursue my PhD in US. Yes, and US, the academic, environment in US is of course top class in the top universities. So that kind of, attracted me, and I decided to do PhD in the US.
It's really true that, and I also felt during my research in short research time in India that the funding is really a big constraint. So that's very good information for all cancer biology research aspirants in India, that if they want to pursue a research in cancer biology, a research career in cancer biology, they should be very careful about where they choose to pursue their research career. What made you choose University of Cincinnati for your PhD, and what was the eligibility criteria in addition to good grades? Was it necessary to have publications beforehand?
So I didn't have a publication when I was applying for PhD, and why I chose Cincinnati is so when I decided to apply for US universities. I made a list of about like 15, 16 universities that I was interested in, and they were mostly based on, ranks, and if I have read some papers, and I really liked that, that work, that type of work, I would try to apply to that, write email to that PI or something. I would be interested in working with him. So it was like mix of both my interests and the just US university ranking and all that. And then I approached my then master's thesis advisor, Dr. Rupak Datta. He's at IISER. So then he, suggested to me some universities that he knew had a good, cancer biology program, and that's when he suggested Cincinnati. Honestly, I didn't think of Cincinnati at that time. Like it was not in my list of those 15, 16 universities. So he suggested that okay, you should look at it. And I saw that it really had a nice cancer and cell biology graduate program. Then and that program was from the medical school, and Cincinnati Medical School was pretty well decent ranked university. So that's why I kind of chose Cincinnati, and I got an offer. And when of all the offers, I chose Cincinnati because it's a medium city, medium big city, and I come from Kolkata. It's a big city, and I didn't want to land up in a small town in US in the Midwest. I had already heard that it's very cold in the Midwest, and the other two universities that I got accept offer letter from were in the Midwest, and they were like small towns. So comparing my, at that time, like my choices, lifestyle choices, Cincinnati was definitely the top choice. So that's why I went for Cincinnati.
So, how important would you say GRE and TOEFL scores were during your application time?
So in our time, I think GRE and TOEFL was seen as, just just a basic criteria to shortlist students. So
Okay.
all universities will have some threshold, GRE score and TOEFL score, and below that they will just shortlist out those students. Uh, and as I hear now that it has changed quite a bit. Not a lot of universities now actually don't need you to take GRE and TOEFL. So I would say, yeah, it's not that important. Like, yeah, some people, I know some students who haven't taken GRE now and they have gotten into US universities.
Okay, that's actually very good and new information to me because I know many students who don't want to apply for a PhD in the US because they don't want to go through the process of taking a GRE, and it's quite, I would say, exhausting. It's a lot of work, and you cannot like just take an exam tomorrow. You have to really prepare a lot. I would say TOEFL and IELTS are more on the easier side, but GRE is really intensive. So that's really good to
Yeah,
know.
I think you still need probably TOEFL just because you just want to show that you understand and you can communicate in English. So that TOEFL is just a measure of that. But GRE, I think a lot of universities have waived off the requirement of GRE.
Yeah, and that's totally understandable because I guess by TOEFL one can understand the minimum level of English required for communication. But I don't remember when I have last used the words that I have learned during my GRE exam preparation. I probably never use them while speaking or writing. So, yeah, it's totally understandable. So you mentioned that you already sent cold emails to professor before applying to some universities, right? So were those cold emails helpful in the decision making process, or the decision making process for the intake of PhD applicants or graduate students is mostly made by the graduate school?
Uh, so I did send a lot of cold emails about like say 2025, and only I got replies from maybe one or two. And as far as I remember, I uh, ultimately didn't get selected in those universities. So it really depends. A lot of people just don't reply because they don't have the time. The professors don't have the time to they might get so many emails, so they don't have the time to reply to you. So it's very luck based. I think what worked for me at least was that, as I said, Cincinnati was suggested by my advisor at Iser, master's advisor, and he knew some people in Cincinnati. Okay, like they were his peers who were then professors at Cincinnati. So his recommendation letters really worked at me. I didn't really write to those professors, but I think in general the graduate school, uh, like those professors were involved in the hiring, and they knew my advisor, and my letters were good from my advisor. So yeah, so that indirectly networking helps. Like definitely, whoever is your advisor for your projects, approach them and ask like if they have they know people in US university. You can also apply to their postdoc mentors if they have done a postdoc in the US or something. So yeah, that helps more than just blindly sending mass emails.
Okay, I guess that was also coupled with the fact that you also had research experience with your supervisor, and he probably mentioned that in this recommendation letter, and that kind of clicked together. It was not just a recommendation letter, but coming from a peer who already knew someone, and you kind of knew you were probably going in good hands.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So, for someone who did not have exposure to immunology or oncology at all during their undergrad or master's studies, can such candidates apply for PhD in this area? Or you have to be really familiar with the subject. For example, I have a background in agriculture, and I always wanted to apply for a PhD in oncology, but I was too scared that I might not have the right skills or familiarity with the subject. I mean, right now I am doing my postdoc in cancer biology. Right now I don't think it's very difficult, but at that time, as a master student, I found it really intimidating. But what are your views on that?
I mean, PhD is the best time, I would say, to, explore things outside what you have already done, because it's early career, and then it's a training period, right? So you want to learn something new, and see what you really like, explore things outside your comfort zone, and things like that. So yeah, you really don't need to have experience in cancer biology to be applying for a graduate program in cancer biology. I honestly had like a 2 month project experience in cancer biology, and that was also like not really cancer. I was just using cancer cells. Not, I was not really doing complicated experiments with cancer research. So I would say I mostly worked in like infectious disease, and but I showed that I'm really interested in cancer biology, and I will utilize whatever I have uh, done, say in molecular biology, or say in microbiology or something. So the research adamant, to show your research adamant, is more important, that you are really interested in learning something new, and okay, you have shown throughout your undergrad that you have taken up projects, you have shown your interest in research. So that is more important. That is more important to write in your statement of purpose than a direct link to the subject you want to pursue your PhD on.
Okay, that's very important information, I think, for most viewers or potential candidates, because in the Indian academic system, it's virtually impossible to switch from one field to another. Like, someone has to kind of continue what they have been doing in their undergrad and masters in their PhD. It's almost impossible for a biochemistry student to probably do a PhD in chemistry, or the other way around. And so I think we are always trained to think like that, that if I have a master's or undergrad experience in this particular subject, I will have to do a PhD in the same exact subject, because I'll have to take exams in that subject, and then probably I'm admitted to the PhD program in India. But I think it's completely different in for US or any other country abroad, because I also did my undergrad and master's in agriculture. I did my PhD in endocrinology. In the beginning, it sounded very crazy and very intimidating, but I survived. Then I also started my PhD initially at gene therapy, and then I switched to cancer biology. So yeah, it's challenging in the beginning, but I guess it's part of the learning process. But I think the most important information is that it is completely possible, doable, and is very normal to pursue PhD or postdoc outside your field of expertise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I completely agree on that. And also, like, I can give some examples. Like, I didn't particularly do that, but I have friends who, did very much like biology in their projects, like molecular biology. And suddenly, like, they thought, okay, they had probably taken a course on, programming or something, and they thought they really enjoy, computation. So then they did a PhD completely in like computational biology. So it really depends what you're interested in, and you have to highlight that in your SOP that okay, I did a course, probably not even like a project, and and that kind of just blew my mind. And like, though I have experience in like all this experimental bench science, but that one course like changed my perspective. So that really shows that you are exploring and you are conscious of your interest. So that's a good thing. And that's all they, at least US universities would look at your SOP and what you really want. They want you to, be a good fit. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to like bring up.
Yeah, that's really great. I also have another example. I know a previous lab mate of my from my PhD lab, and he has actually had a bachelor and master's in computer engineering. He had never heard of even DNA when he started his PhD in my previous lab, and then eventually he graduated with a Nature communication paper from in his PhD, and then did his postdoc in Yale, and right now he's a professor in Virginia. So yeah, if looking back, I think if anybody told him that he wouldn't have succeeded as in a PhD program in biological sciences, that would have been the end of it. But yeah, it really depends on how interested we are to learn and what we are really interested in. What soft skills or let's say lab skills are necessary for a successful PhD application in immunology or oncology?
Um, so I would say normal like molecular biology stuff are like the direct hard skills, I would say. So like some techniques with like protein Western blot, PCRs and qPCRs and all that. Like you need to know certain like techniques that are common in molecular biology and also applied in like cancer and immunology. Uh, you need to know the basic foundations of cancer and immunology, right? Like the biology, the no, I'm saying like you need to read papers and uh, the basic biological mechanisms. Learn about like T cells, how they interact with a tumor cell. That's like the basic foundation of immuno-oncology, right? So the scientific knowledge, definitely you need that. And I would say soft skill wise, you I think it's not just basic, particularly in immuno-oncology, but in general, I think you have to know how to approach a problem solving skill, right? Like you will fail during your PhD, projects will fail, and then troubleshooting them and how to up strategy come up with a strategy to solve the problem is another like soft skill that you definitely need for any PhD you pursue. It's not just for immuno-oncology.
Okay, okay, that's good to hear. Okay. So I believe you had to do lab rotations before you chose your lab for your PhD. So can you describe briefly what you had to do and how useful was the experience for you?
Yes, so for our program, we were required to do at least two rotations, lab rotations, and they were, I think, 2 months duration. All were like in my first year, and they were very helpful because you are kind of in the lab, in that particular lab, you can really see what other people are working on, what your project might be. Like you can have those conversations with the PI, right? Like what the prospective PhD project be like, and then you can see like whether you can like it. And then it's also the time to learn new techniques, right? If you as like the previous question was that you if you never had an opportunity to work in cancer biology, then that is the right time to explore what techniques you can use, what experiments you run, learn about the science, learn about the projects. So yeah, it was very useful. And also you kind of see whether you are fitting in the lab or not, like whether you have good lab mates who are like willing to help you, whether you are also being able to whether they like you or not, whether you are able to like mix with them and all that. And then you are also being able to, so it's not that you are only being judged, you are also judging the lab, right? Whether it is the lab where you want to spend rest of your PhD in. So that's very important, right? You are also judging the PI, whether he is a good mentor or not, whether he is giving time to others and you. So definitely they are useful. And uh, for me, I did like 3 rotations and then chose a lab. So yeah, I wish I had done like more. I think it's very important because in like 2 months it's still short to know everything. And yeah, judge the whether you'll be happy in that lab for the next 4 years or not. But yeah, it's a good opportunity. And it's a very unique thing about, I think, US PhDs. I'm not sure actually in Europe, because Europe you kind of go directly to a lab, right? Like to a PI, so you don't have that opportunity. So that's why I said probably it's the very unique thing that's there in US PhDs.
Yeah, that's true. I have never heard anyone doing lab rotations in a EU PhD. I think probably because in EU the money for or funding for a PhD position comes directly from the grant. So whenever there is a PhD position created in a grant or funded by a grant, it's advertised and then students are hired. However, I think in US part of the money for either tuition or stipend for a PhD student comes from the graduate school. So, so the students are probably first admitted, depending on how much money the graduate school has, and then probably allocated to the professors. And then probably they can be paid both by the graduate school and also by the professor. So it's kind of a mix and not exclusive. So that's why, yeah, I totally understand. It's a really good way because PhD is a long time commitment, and then I say use this example as it's like marrying someone, and it's very very important to know what you are getting into before committing 5 years of our life in a particular work environment. It's very important to know who is our PI, how is that person, and who our colleagues will be, and how is it to work with them, to hang out with them. Yeah, so I also think lab rotations are super important. How was your experience adjusting to the culture shock in US? How did you find it easy, or what did you find it easy or difficult to cope up with?
Yeah, there were a lot, so I can only like list down a few. So one was definitely like coming from India to US, so much away from your family, so many miles away from your family was difficult, right? Like to cope up with the loneliness and just being by yourself in the independence is has its pros and cons. You have to I was very, I think, what was difficult is I had to do everything by myself, right? Like from starting from, cooking, then, doing the dishes, then, putting everything to, putting my clothes to, washing, the grocery shopping, everything. And with that, I had to do my, lab rotations and coursework and, the research. So that was very difficult. In Indian, I always tell my friends who did a PhD in India that, they didn't have to really worry about these things because they used to stay in hostels that had, a mess or cafeteria where they could like just, yeah, eat. But yeah, so this was a biggest challenge, I would say, coming to the US. Then the other one was related to the weather, right? I was in Cincinnati, it's in Midwest. It gets really cold. So I come from Kolkata. It's so warm there. We hardly have winters nowadays. So coming to a place where it would go almost like sometimes it would go minus 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. So that was really difficult. Um, but at the same time, I think the pros is that you get to see seasons related to like weather, right? Like in Kolkata, I never saw spring or, the color of the leaves don't change. So that was very nice seeing it in US. There are four different seasons and very distinct. And I really enjoy those shoulder seasons, spring and fall, personally. So that was one of the pros. The other pro I really think is it makes you independent, and that's a very important. So as I said, there's pros and cons to independence, right? That makes you a different individual. So I know I can really navigate through big problems in life. I had to really buy my own car when I was graduate student, and these are big things, big decisions in life. So and then also like navigate, I was a single person, and then dating and looking for the person whom I would marry. I had all happened when I was a PhD student. So I have really grown as an individual, and I don't know how much of that, if I would be the same person if I did a PhD in somewhere else versus, so much away from the family. And yeah, so.
Yeah, that's really true. And I also kind of feel like that part of me tells me that, okay, my life would have been much easier if I stayed closer to my home, to my parents, or did something in India. It would have been much easier. Maybe I could have done other things on the side, but then part of me tells me that I probably wouldn't have become the same person as I am right now if I didn't do my PhD there, because it was so stressful just surviving. Even if I forget about research or my PhD, just doing basic things that I have never done at home, cooking, grocery shopping, surviving in the snow, and there is really no exception. Even if I'm sick, I have to find a way to feed myself, and really there is nobody to rescue. Yes, there are friends and people that I have known for a while, but I cannot really depend on anyone. So it kind of pushed me to the wall to become independent for like there is no other really an exception. So I guess it comes really handy right now if I'm when I'm navigating bigger problems in life, and as you said, it's really helpful. Can you describe your PhD program briefly? What was the overall goal, and what did a typical day look like for you in your lab or in your research group? Did you have to take courses? Were they mandatory? How did you kind of manage the 4 years in terms of curriculum or research work?
So yes, there were mandatory courses for 3 semesters, so 1.5 years of your PhD. Uh, some of those courses were mandatory, and some courses we could like choose from various like different options. And I think after the coursework period is when had to take a candidacy exam. So for the candidacy we had to like and by the way, like the first year is all your rotation, lab rotation period. As I said, like I did 3 rotations and then chose one lab. So that all that happened by the end of my first year. I had a lab that I wanted to spend uh, rest of my PhD in. So yes, so that's the first year. And then second year, first semester we still had to do some coursework, but the second semester of second year we had to take this candidacy exam, where we think of a project idea, right? And then you are basically proposing what you are going to do for that project for your PhD, and you have to write the whole proposal in form of a grant, with like NIH style grant that had like aims page, and that had your specific aims that you want to do for the project, and then elaborating on that, what exactly the experiments you want to design to address the aims, and what you expect the results to be. So it had to be written in that format, and then you have to defend that in front of a committee. The committee was decided by the graduate program, and then in that committee, you can also choose one or two members. I don't remember exactly. So it was a mix of predefined people and then people that you wanted to be in. And then the committee will decide whether, your proposal needs revisions or you are just good to go. Then actually you start your PhD project. You start working on the project, building experiments, and uh, and having generating data, analyzing, and work towards um, uh, uh, like you works towards the progress. And intermittently we used to have a committee meeting. So that's your thesis committee. For the thesis committee, usually we used to decide the members. Basically, they are professors other than your PI who, might be well in might have like similar expertise as your project. So you basically, other than your PI, you have someone who can like help you if you have any problem. So that's the thesis committee, and we used to have like intermittently, like I think a meeting every 6 months with them to just see whether you are on track or not. So, and then yeah, ultimately you work towards completion of the project, right? You are expected, at least in our graduate program, we were expected to have a paper by the end of our PhD. So you are basically working towards a paper, research paper. And yeah, that's kind of the structure of the PhD program.
Okay, okay. And what would you say were your main challenges during your PhD? Was it collecting data or field visits or publishing, writing your thesis? What did you struggle most, especially in the field of immuno-oncology?
For me particularly, the biggest challenge was because my projects failed. Like I started with some project, and I was not getting uh, good data to like some anything novel to pursue. And yeah, so that was like my hypothesis also kept failing for one of the projects. So I had to like scrape through projects. So that was like biggest challenge. For me, until like at least like middle of my third year, I didn't really have a project. I was like just changing between projects. So yeah, and then like I think throughout my PhD there were like small failures, right? Like these were the big projects failed, but yes, but and 99% of the times experiments also failed. Like so that was my biggest challenge, I would say. And like being okay with failures, and that's really needed when you are doing research. I think 90%, as I said, 99% of the times things will not work, but 1% time it will work, and you have to like just keep your mind sane and work towards those one look forward to those 1% time, and that's the norm, and you have to be okay with it.
Yeah, that's really very brave of you to share, because it's also very important information, as people expect. I know many people expect to finish PhD in 3 years, or like come up with excellent data, but at least in the field of biological sciences, when we are working with living organisms, that is far from reality, and you can never expect what will work or what will not work. So we have to be really really okay with failures and have a plan B and be ready to pursue side projects and have alternative projects and really scratch from like basically what we get. And sometimes we are lucky that things work out as we expect, and then we have really nice data, very polished results. But most of the times that's not true, and it is very normal to experience this during a PhD program. So it looks like you finished your PhD roughly in 6 years, which is my follow-up question. Is that I get a lot of questions from STEM students as to what is the normal timeline for a PhD program in the STEM field.
Yes, so that also again really depends on your project and the field. Basically, in say in biology, people who work with lower model organisms, right? The things are faster, right? A bacteria grows overnight, but like a mice experiments really take time. Like it can take months. So definitely depends on the type of work you are doing. And again, I think every PhD student has their own, path. They are going through different terrains. So you can't really compare. Some of your peers might, finish being in the same field. Some might finish within 3 years, but then they are on their own path and you are on your own, terrain. Not everybody's terrains are equal. Some might have a smooth journey. Some might have, a rough journey. So it's really doesn't make sense to compare with other people. It's very subjective. It can take some time between like 3 years to like even 8 years. So it's really subjective. Just be open to that it may take like you 3 years, or it may take you 8 years, and just be okay with that. Just don't forget the purpose, that why you are doing a PhD. And that's why it's important to know that before jumping into a PhD program, that you really want that. Just know the pros and cons, and yeah, just be motivated about that, why you are doing a PhD, rather than just thinking about like, yeah, when you will finish.
Yeah, that's really motivating, and I would suggest the viewers or any prospective candidate to focus on the same. So you have worked for as a postdoc also for a brief period of time in the university and right now in the industry. Do you think that as a PI who is hiring for a postdoc, the number of years taken to complete a PhD program has any effect on the future career prospects, or should the accomplishments or publications made during the PhD program be of more value regardless of the timeline? Because I know this is kind of I would say, big concern for people who want to come back to India after PhD, and they think that okay, if they take a very long time to complete their PhD, then it might not be as valuable in India. But in general, do you think that the timeline really has any value, or should the accomplishments be really valued?
Yeah, I think it really doesn't matter. Like if you have done your PhD in 4 years versus 6 years or 7 years. Yes, if you have not been very productive and yet you have spent like say 9 years or 10 years in PhD, then that's a little red flag, I would say. But other than that, like if you have been productive, if you have published papers, uh, 6 years, 7 years versus like 4 years doesn't really matter. The PhD is a training period. You have to focus that you have really gotten trained well, and you have learned new. You have developed new skill sets. You have grown. That's more important than I would say the time period. Yes, and one of the ways is of course publications, but other than that also like people focus on whether you have grown as a student. If you have learned new techniques, you have learned new science, and you have driven a project from a fail almost from a failure to how you excelled. So that's what people would focus on.
So I guess if someone has a really long PhD journey, but excellent, I would say, results, then, or maybe even not excellent results, but maybe less than expected publication, they can probably use the interview as an opportunity to tell their story as to what worked and what didn't work, or how they could turn their failing project or almost failed project to a successful project and had a publication. Looking back, what would you have done differently if you were given a chance to redo your PhD?
Um, So I think I don't have a in general like regret, because I think every mistake that I made, I took it as a learning opportunity, you know. So I don't really have a regret, though I can like share probably like what mistakes I made, that I can share. So I definitely I think that I chose a mentor too quickly, and I also, my rotations were more based on, I did my most of my rotations were in big labs, okay, where the PI is already very accomplished and was publishing like really high impact papers, because I was coming from India, right? It's a very competitive environment in India. I grew up like that, to always look for highly accomplished PIs, and rotate. I rotated with them. I did not focus on how good the mentor was, and that's very important, because I think, as I said, PhD is a training period, and you really need to be mentored by good PIs who focus on you, who focus on your growth, who focus on your career, right? In PhD, you have to write papers, you have to write grants, and you need to go to mentors who really give you that time and train you. So I would, as I said, like I think I regret that. Like my PI was very senior person. He was very busy. I won't say that I didn't get that training, but I had to, navigate through it. I had a postdoc who kind of mentored me, a senior postdoc in the lab, who was very good with all this, like, writing and all that. So I definitely got mentored, but not by the PI. And if I have to change something, I will probably go to a younger PI or something who is like less accomplished and, gives you more time. And yeah, so that's would be my answer.
That's something also I experienced during the first 2 semesters. I also started in a lab where it was really big, and my PI was almost always traveling in field visits. But I figured out it's not the best environment for me because I had barely any training. I started my PhD in something completely different, and then I switched to a very smaller lab. And initially, I was very disappointed because there were only 2 graduate students, and I was kind of surprised how that would turn out. But luckily, that was the best mentorship I got the entire 4 years. My PI was always available for me. He taught me how to write grants and to spend hours correcting my slides. And I would send him countless these grant proposals. I would say most of them never got funded, but he never said no to correcting them, and multiple times, and all kinds of competitions, conference awards, everything. He was always there for me. He always recommended me to people for collaborations. He would set up meetings. So yeah, as I said, it was like I was only after the second year of my PhD. I think I was the only graduate student. I was the lab manager. I was the technician, but at the same time I had all his attention, and there was a lot of freedom. I did a lot of stuff, a lot of side projects, and he was always there. Yes, I mean, in the beginning I thought like maybe if I went to a bigger lab there would have been more money. I could have been more famous or had a famous PI. But I think it really depends on what kind of training we are looking for. And as you said, that it's very important to find a mentor who really cares about the student's career and prospect and growth. So, by the end of PhD, students are typically expected to publish at least one paper. As you mentioned, your program also had that requirement. So, but some students also manage to publish multiple papers. What would be your recommendation for future career prospects? Should PhD students focus more on the quality or number of publications? Let's say getting one paper in a 10 impact factor journal, or getting multiple papers in, let's say, 2 to 3 impact factor journals. Are impact factors important when applicants are evaluated for postdoc positions?
Yeah, so this is a little difficult to say. Like really, I don't really know whether impact factors matter in the long run. But I mean, sometimes what happens is it's not in your hands. A lot of it is luck because you don't know whether your project will work or not. uh, for a high impact publication, you need a good project that's working. So, and sometimes it can take a long time. So I guess, like, if you what I think is, if you think that the project is really good, and there are prospects of publishing it in a high impact journal, then yeah, of course, go for it, and that might take you some time. So and even if you have like one paper but it's a high impact publication, then that's of course good. But even if it's not, if it's a low, if you can like get it through a small impact factor, but you could, if you are productive, if you have collaborated in other people's projects and you have multiple publication, that also shows that you have done. I think most PIs would understand that not always projects work. So if you are able to explain that, and if you have multiple papers but they are like low impact factor, I think they are equally good. And in the long run, I think that's what matters. Most PI, as I said, they would see whether you have gotten well trained for your PhD, like I think from the papers from your PhD doesn't need to be so high impact. They don't really matter. Yes, postdoc, it definitely matters, but PhD is still a very early career to be, yeah, worrying about this, the impact factor of the journals.
Okay, and how would you say your work-life balance was during your PhD and also as a postdoc in the university? Is it something that students should generally expect, or does it vary greatly based on the research group?
It's mix of both, I would say. Really, I've seen that it depends on the research group. Some labs are really toxic and things are beyond your control. The PIs kind of have there's always a power dynamic, right? You are always less powerful than the PI. PI has a lot of, you have a lot of stake at stake, right? Like the PI might, use his power to, you know, um, uh, force you to do certain, things. So I've seen those labs, and it's unfortunate, and you can't do much. Either you have to take a strong decision to quit and restart if you are still want to do a PhD. Otherwise, I don't think you can do much. But also, sometimes it depends on you, right? Like for me, I never grew up doing one thing. I always used to learn dancing, and I was very passionate about dancing. So during my PhD, I always took time, to perform, to do dance, and that would keep my mental health well. And that's very important, I think, to also excel in science. If you are mentally not well, you won't be able to do well in science. So that was very important for me, and I've always been like that. I don't just, I never just studied. I always focused on extracurricular activities, and yeah, throughout my career, PhD, I took time to Uh, focus on my hobbies, and also like I would that's how I know Bidisha. I know her through where we have performed together, and we were a group of friends. We used to like have get-togethers on Friday evenings, weekends, and so that's very important for your well-being. Yeah, taking care of your mental health is very important.
Okay. So you have eventually transitioned from being a postdoc in the university to a postdoc in the industry. Was it always what you wanted, that you wanted to move to a transition to industry eventually, or what made you make that decision?
Yeah, it happened gradually, I would say. Like, even during in the final years of my PhD, I wasn't so sure about industry. I really liked academia, like certain aspects of academia. But Yeah, during my postdoc, I kind of figured that, um, that my project was not going in a direction where I would have an uh, early publication and grant. I also applied to various early career grants during my postdoc, my academic postdoc, and I didn't get a very I didn't get funded and all that. So I kind of got demotivated in the process in those 2 years of being in academia, and then I started exploring, industry positions. And then as I, explored and I got more, sure that okay, this is what probably I want, and yeah, eventually that's why I transitioned to industry. And so far I really don't want to go back to academia ever again. I really like industry. It's very different. It's high paced work and very translational, what I do. Like it's very relevant to patients. Whatever science I'm doing on bench is relevant to patients, and that's very rewarding. And yeah, and I think work-life balance is better, benefits, salary is much better than academia. So all these things are really strong, reasons to for me to like just yeah stay in industry.
So for those people who don't want to do a postdoc and they want to directly transition to academia after their PhD, are there opportunities in the industry
You mean
for positions?
industry, like transition into industry after PhD, right?
Exactly, yeah, transitioning to industry after directly after PhD. So, is it possible to go transition to industry directly after PhD? And if yes, what kind of roles should one expect? And then also, kind of briefly, what kind of skills should one expect to have if someone is willing to or wants to join as a in an industry position right after or straight after PhD?
Yes, there are so many opportunities. Industry is so vast. So if you like bench science, then I think the easiest way to transition into industry is through a industry postdoc. That's what I'm doing. So there are right now quite a lot of industry postdocs in most of the big, companies, pharma companies. So that you can definitely transition right after your PhD. And other than that, even like some scientist positions, if you are good at certain, techniques, experiment techniques, you can always apply for the scientist positions. They don't really need postdoc experience. You can directly apply after your PhD. Other than bench science, I think there are a lot of things related to like scientific communications, right? Like scientific writing, where you write all these like protocols and regulatory writing for trials and stuff. So that you can do if you are good at writing. So that's something. If you enjoy it, then that's something to consider, scientific writing. The other thing is if you are a good communicator, if you like speaking to people, then MSL, medical science liaison, that's something you can consider. You basically need to develop relationships with like physicians and talk about a drug and like the science and present to them what this drug is doing, how were the trial results and all that. Uh, so that's an option if you are a good communicator. Um, Other than that, you can always, work on like trials, right? Clinical trials. You can apply for clinical trial managers who, overlook the trial, manage the trial. There are various jobs related to like clinical trial management, like clinical research associates, and so if you are really, I think, passionate about trials, and if you're a good person who can manage things, and so then that's another thing you can directly go after your PhD. So these or most of these require like soft skills. either like, you need to be good communicator, or, you can manage stuff. You're very good at, organizing things. And so, yeah, so those are like non-bench opportunities that you can apply after your PhD.
Okay, so that's good to know that there are a lot of options depending on what I'm good at and what I am really interested in, how I want, whether I want to use my hard skills in the lab or whether I want to use my soft skills. Sometimes I get this question from students that they want to transition to industry, um, because not because just because of their interest, but also because they had a negative experience during their PhD, or let's say they are very skilled at particular something, but they didn't really have a chance to get good publication. So most of their projects failed, or they had like a suboptimal publication, which they think is not enough for a good postdoc position. So that brings me to my next question, that for any kind of industry positions, are publications really important, or are the candidates evaluated based on their publications during PhD?
Outside bench science, no, not really. In bench science, if you are looking for positions in discovery, like I can only talk from a perspective of, pharma and biotech, right? So if you are applying for positions in pharma or biotech, and that too in discovery, then your publications might matter. But other than that, I don't think that, like the ones that I mentioned, right? Like MSL and clinical trial management. I don't think publications really matter. Yeah, scientific writing. They will see whether you are able to. If you have written grants or something, when if you have written, the paper writing is probably a little bit important, but doesn't need to be like a first author paper or something, right? Even can be co-author paper. So yeah, publications won't matter in those aspects. Only in probably discovery it would matter.
Okay, so basically, if I, let's say, want to apply for a discovery position as a CRISPR scientist, or a chromatography, or someone using who has to use mass spec regularly for some protein characterization, then I should have a publication in that particular field to prove that I am equipped with those skills to carry out the job. But if
And that
I
doesn't
am
need to be a first author. It can be a co-author
okay.
paper also. But yeah, if you are going to a technique heavy position where they really need you to know that technique, right? Like as you mentioned, mass spec, right? Like probably in industry they won't hire someone who has like no zero knowledge about mass spec. And one way to show that you have knowledge about mass spec is to have a publication. That can be a co-author. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's really good to know. But on the other hand, if I'm applying for positions which require, let's say, my communication skills, as you said, medical science liaison, or as a consultant, then probably through my interviews, and there will be multiple aptitude tests where I will be able to demonstrate my communication skills, my negotiation skills, and public speaking skills. And in that case, I guess publications would not be really important for the positions. So, for your industrial postdoc position, did you follow a traditional application process where we find open positions online and then submit an application, or did you find this position through networking and collaborations mostly?
I found this position through networking, and I think most of the time that's what has worked for me. So I was referred to this position by like a person I knew, and yeah, I think that's what helped. Networking always helps. Like keep people, in your network very close. Like always reach out to them when you are job searching. They can connect you to people in industry they know. If you are particularly interested in certain positions, then you can always like reach out to them on LinkedIn or something. You can go to conferences, and conferences are a good way to network. So that's yeah, I would say like networking is definitely helps in job search, and that helped me. Uh, just traditional applying, I won't say that I didn't get interviews through that. That also can happen. But it always it's a number game. When job market is really difficult, then you have to they will look for people they kind of know, or like they know through like referrals and stuff. Like if someone can like really recommend your resume or something to the hiring manager, that's even like better. So yeah, it really depends on situation. And I would say getting a referral, or getting a direct contact with the hiring manager is, of course, increases your chances than traditionally applying through the portal and uploading your resume. They might get like hundreds of resumes for the same jobs.
Yeah, I mean, networking is very important, and I think it's very good that you mentioned also, as PhD students, we think that we don't have time outside our research work or outside our lab, and we kind of are, I wouldn't say comfortable, but we stick to our own bubble. But it's very important that if we want a job right after our PhD in industry, we have to network and take some time out every day or maybe routinely to do that, because even if you have you clearly have a lot of publications, you're very accomplished, but I guess networking helped you a little bit to get the job, and probably it would have been a little bit more difficult if you're just a PhD student applying online for positions without knowing anyone. So I think it's, to all PhD students, it's important to network outside your lab, no matter how much work you have to do. How was your visa situation during this whole process? I believe you were on F1 visa during your PhD, and then F1 OPT during your first postdoc, and right now you are on O1 visa, right?
Yes, yes, yes. So yeah, that was another visa was another reason why after 2 years of my academic postdoc, I kind of very immediately I wanted to like move to industry, because that was the right time, because I still had 1 year left on my OPT. So I didn't need a sponsorship right away from industry, because I had heard that convincing an industry to sponsor a visa is sometimes like difficult. So that's why as soon as my academic postdoc, I was seeing that the project is not like moving in a direction I want it to be. I kind of decided that okay, I like industry probably. Discovery is something I really enjoyed, so that's why I kind of applied for discovery scientist, senior scientist, scientists, and postdoc positions. And yeah, I joined initially on OPT. I had 1 year left on my OPT. And then J&J sponsored my O1 visa. They first tried H1B, but H1B is lottery based in profit, right, in companies. So, and my H1B didn't get picked. So then the option was O1. So they did, yeah, sponsor my O1.
And there are astonishing number of postdocs from India joining labs in the US every year. Some of them want to transition to industry after a short postdoc period. What would be your expert recommendations to those who start as a postdoc and then want to transition to industry? How would their visa situation work out? Because as far as I know, they most of them start as on J1 visa directly.
Yeah, so then the O1 is actually a good option, right? I would not say that a lot of industry will just, say that they don't want to sponsor visa. It is difficult, but keep trying. I have seen many people nowadays who have transitioned from J1 to O1. So O1 is definitely the option to transition into industry. H1B, as I said, it's only, it's lottery based. It had the lottery takes place only at a certain time of the year. So it's very difficult to get an H1B, but O1 is possible with a PhD. You kind of have all the criteria that are required for applying for O1. So try to convince the company for an O1. So when you are applying, just don't say right away that you need sponsorship, but like as you go through the interviews, when they see you as a current candidate, they might be interested that, okay, yeah, probably we want to hire this person, and then they will go to an extent of to whatever extent it takes to hire you, So yeah, try to do that, and as you go through the interviews, try to talk to them and try to convince them to sponsor an O1. And it's really easy right now. I've seen many people getting approved for O1. It's just the title. It's something called it says O1 is an extraordinary ability visa or something. So it sounds overwhelming, but it's not that difficult if you have a PhD.
Yeah, actually, I also heard the same that O1 is actually Einstein visa or extraordinary ability visa, but you simplified it more, and I guess more and more candidates who have the opportunity to transition to industry through a O1 visa, it would probably inspire them to look into this more and not be intimidated by the application process. Okay, so yeah, so obtaining a U.S. Green card is really a lengthy and exhausting process, especially for Indian citizens, and it's becoming more and more difficult. Based on your experience, what some important steps that a PhD student should follow, starting from the beginning of their PhD in the US, if they want to settle in the US and obtain a green card? What you think, according to you, would be some steps that they can ensure that can make their path to a US green card easier?
Yeah, I would say that as soon as you have, papers of your own, like collaboration paper, co-author papers, first author papers, doesn't matter. As soon as you have papers, try to apply for the EB2 category of green card, NIW. It says it's called EB2 NIW. So if you have a PhD, if you have paid publications, then you can apply for that. You kind of strike off all the criterias. Try to do that. The EB2 dates for India particularly is not current. It's very retrogressed. It's like there is a 10-year or 12 years gaps, but doesn't matter. You get a priority date that you can use later on to apply for an EB1 visa, right? So EB1 is the extraordinary whatever criteria, and there you really need a good profile, right? EB1A is even more difficult than EB1B. EB1B is company sponsored or like university sponsored, like your workplace sponsored. EB1A is self sponsored. So with time, you can build that profile for an EB1. But as soon as you, I think, have papers in your, when you are an F1 or whatever for postdocs, if you are on J1, uh, just apply for the EB2 NIW and lock in the priority date.
Okay, that's actually very important information because I know a lot of candidates who refrain from applying for EB2 um, EB2 based green card because they think or they know that the priority date is very far and it's not going to be current anytime soon. But the way you explained, actually it makes it easier to further develop the profile and apply through EB1. Okay. Okay, so I think final question. Do you have any plans on going back to India, or are you quite happy with your job here? What are your future plans as of now?
So that's always a difficult question to answer, right? Like we are always in dilemma. Particularly, I think I'm still not decided that whether I wanna stay here. I really enjoy working in the industry here. I like what I am doing, and I know I have to compromise a little bit when I go back to India, especially because I really like discovery, and there are not many opportunity for discovery R&D in India. Um, but yeah, we'll figure it out. Mostly, I think I would want to move for family reasons, right? The green card, as I said, green card process is longer, and even like I'm not very sure whether I want citizenship of US. So we'll figure it out with time, I think. I'm not yet decided. I still want to move back for my live closer to my parents. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing your experience. It was really good to hear your story. I think even as a friend, I didn't get a chance to hear your full story from starting your education in India to your current work, and I'm sure it will be very useful for the viewers for the questions that you have answered regarding your PhD, your postdoc, the green card process, and the little insights into how your life was, your work experience was. So, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. It was a very nice experience for me as well. And it's great that you are doing this. And I hope it really helps students to make decisions and, be aware of what a PhD takes. And yeah.